Welcome back, everyone. After our lunch break, I hope that you had a chance to enjoy the food and to refuel for the exciting sessions ahead. And also, welcome everyone joining us online via Zoom. It is my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Chiara Dellantonio. She's working as a site reliability engineer at Google, so it does not come as a surprise that she's a speaker at a tech conference. But that's actually not what she's going to talk about today. In her daily work, she's accustomed to solving puzzles quickly, but today she'll introduce us to a very different type of speed puzzling, solving jigsaw puzzles as quickly as possible. She began competing only 2 years ago in 2022, but instantly became one of the quickest puzzlers, finishing consistently in the top 10 in different categories at the World Championships and winning several competitions since. Chiara will take us along on her journey into the fascinating world of speed puzzling and tell us how she ended up being so puzzled. So get ready to be inspired, entertained, and maybe even puzzled yourself. Chiara, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Dietmar. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to my talk, and thanks for so many of you being interested in my talk. I didn't expect to have a room this full. And so, as Dietmar already said, I am Chiara. I do work in tech, like many of you here in the room. I do work right here in Munich, but today I'm going to tell you all about my story into jigsaw puzzling. And let me also present my cats. These are Safi and Simba. You're going to see a bit more of them in the next 30 minutes. And so, to start with my story, let's go back to the beginning, a few decades ago. And let me introduce you to Tiny Me. I do not have many memories about that time. I don't know if any of you do. But what I've been told, and I believe it, is that everything started when I was around 2 years old, and my mom started doing jigsaw puzzles with me. Of course, we started with the basics, so very few pieces, thick cardboard, a few wooden puzzles, and these 4 here are actually some of the puzzles from my childhood. I had my mom go dig them up to prepare this presentation, and we were both surprised of the good state they're still in. Mine some scribbles on the boxes, because 3 of us, I have 2 sisters, played with them for years, and they are actually still usable, apparently. And so that was it. I started very young, and from then on, I was just hooked. And so the puzzles kept growing in sizes, and I kept growing up. I started doing 500-piece puzzles, and then 1,000-piece puzzles, and then even bigger ones. And so we get to my teenage years, and my main memory of that period of time is me sitting on the floor, on the rug in the living room, with a puzzle in front of me there, and like the TV going on in the same time. And in particular, like a fun memory I have, or like the main thing is, I used to watch the Lord of the Rings series, like the movie, as a marathon over and over again. If I could, the extended edition, and like at first I started in Italian, which is my mother tongue, and then I moved to English once I was, able to understand it enough. And so it just continued. I kept doing bigger and bigger puzzles, and then we get to my 18th birthday. Now, I do not know if it's the same here in Germany, but in Italy, the 18th birthday is one of the big ones, and so you can get the big presents. And so you're probably not going to be very puzzled by finding out that what I asked my parents for was a giant puzzle. Now, what does giant puzzle mean? Well, for 18-year-old me, giant puzzle meant the biggest I could think of, and more practically, the biggest we could find in a toy shop. So the puzzle that I got for my 18th birthday was this 9,000-piece puzzle right here. This is the Battles of Algiers, and it's not an easy puzzle, you can probably guess. Lots of the same colors, but I loved it. And it actually took a while before I actually put this puzzle together, because, well, you probably can guess just from the number, but it's huge. This puzzle is 2 meters wide and 1.5 meters tall. So like this. So my dad built me these cardboard planks that would go on top of the living room table to extend it a bit, and I did the puzzle on top of that. And I did that like 3 years after my 18th birthday. I was already in university, it was in the summer, and I took the time and probably made my parents angry because I occupied the living room for a month. But, yeah. And you can also probably tell that the puzzle is split there in the middle. That's because I never actually put it together, at least there are no pictures, so I don't remember doing that. And these giant puzzles always come in separate bags. A bit of it is because of production. It's hard to print such a big piece of cardboard all in one go. And a bit of it, I think, is also to let people do them in smaller chunks if they want to. But back to the initial question. So what does giant mean for a puzzle? Well, as of today, and as far as I know, the biggest puzzle in the world is this one. It's 60,000 pieces, so more than 6 times the one that I showed you earlier. And it's really gigantic, like 2.5 meters tall and 9 meters long. So maybe it would fit in this room, but like occupy it all. And I have not seen this puzzle in person, but I have seen one that is kind of close to it, and that is the one that I'm sitting on in this picture on the right. And that one is a 51,000 piece puzzle from Kodak. And I did not do that puzzle all on my own. This puzzle, I only contributed to it, so I did earn my picture. But we did this one collaboratively all together in March of this year at the US national competition. And as you can see, I have also done more giant puzzles. The 9,000 piece puzzle is kind of my yearly tradition now. It's small enough that I can do it in a reasonable amount of time. And if I move some furniture around, I can fit it on the floor in my kitchen. Like, this is my apartment here in Munich. And so this works, and I can do one more or less every year. The only difference is that now I do open the bags and mix them up and like do it all in one go, because that's better. Like, it's not really doing 9,000 pieces if you don't do them all together. And so you've now heard about like my initial growing up story. And I was a kid and doing puzzles. I was in high school doing puzzle. I was in university and did my first giant puzzle. And then I grew up. I graduated, started having a job. I moved abroad for my job. And you'd expect me to stop puzzling because it's a kid hobby at some point. Well, no, not really, never did. So on the first day when I moved to Dublin, which was where I first moved abroad, I bought myself a puzzle. And I bought myself a challenge puzzle. So challenge puzzle or impossible puzzles are things like this. And you can probably guess where the name comes from. Like, they all look exactly the same on the entire puzzle. The one that I bought for myself is the one up there on top, the Minions one. And I chose an impossible puzzle because I wanted it to last me a month. My family was going to join me after a month, and we were going to move into the permanent apartment. And in the meantime, I wanted to have something to keep me busy. So I took the box, I hid it away, and tried doing the puzzle without it, in the evenings, obviously, because I also had started my job in the meantime. And I ended up not managing that. So the last week before moving into the new place, I looked for the box again, and like by doing that, in a couple of evenings, I managed to finish the puzzle. Because you can kind of tell where the minions go if you have the box in front of you and like go piece by piece and find them in there. And so when I moved to Munich a year later, I did the same thing. And I bought myself a micro puzzle on my first day. And these are micro, as you can tell. That is my hand on there with the puzzle. It's 600 pieces, teeny tiny, and I needed that because this time I was in a hotel room at the beginning, so I only had the coffee table there, and I needed something that would fit on the coffee table. And so now, well, the reason why you're all here is to hear me talk about speed puzzling. So let's get into that part of the story. So we go forward a few years, cue the pandemic. Now, the pandemic didn't affect me much for this part of the story, but it is a period of time in which a lot of the world did rediscover puzzling. I was already doing this as my hobby all of the time, but there was a huge boom in sales in that period because puzzles are a cheap thing to buy and a very good hobby to spend some time when you cannot exit your apartment. And so what happened for me is during this period, during the pandemic, there are two things that happened. The first one is I joined Instagram, and I started finding my community there. There's the puzzle fam, that's the hashtag. I didn't start posting for years. I didn't even have puzzle in my handle name for a long time. But then I started following other people that were doing puzzles and posting pictures of their puzzles or their pets on their puzzles, like I do. And that was the first thing. The second thing is, well, we go back to me watching TV while I do puzzles. And so it was 2020, and a movie showed up on Netflix, and I decided to watch that movie despite not having even watched the trailer. And the movie was called, guess, Puzzles. And it had puzzles on the cover, so that's why I had to watch it. Now, I didn't really like the movie much, but it made me learn lots of things. So I'm not super recommending the movie. It wasn't the nice romantic comedy that I expected it to be, sadly. So I'm going to spoil you the story. Apologies. Yeah, that's it. So there's this lady. She is a mom. She lives around New York City in the suburbs or like a small town. And she has kids. She's unhappy with her life. And she gets a puzzle as a present. So she does this puzzle, and she finds out she really enjoys it. And so she decides to go to New York and go to a puzzle shop, and in the puzzle shop, buy more puzzles. While she's there, she finds a flyer. And she finds this flyer about someone who's looking for a puzzle partner for a competition. And so she answered this ad, and she meets with this man. He's the speed puzzler. He used to do it with his wife previously, but they're now separated, and he now looks for a new companion. So they start meeting up, they start training together, they find out that they're fast, they go to the US Nationals together, they win it. All of the competitions are only for pairs. And then at the end, towards the end of the movie, they are meant to go to Belgium for the world competition. They do not end up going to Belgium because she finds herself again. They do have an affair in the meantime, but she decides to go back to her family and like break up with him and never talk to him again. And so the movie ends up kind of sadly, but it did leave me with a lot of questions because I started thinking, wait, maybe this is real. Like, do competitions actually exist? And so I started searching online, because what else would you do? And, well, if you do the search today, or if any of you has done the search after seeing the abstract of my talk, you will find a lot of resources. There's a lot of websites that talk about speed puzzling. There's a lot of YouTube channels who talk about speed puzzling. And like, there's just a lot of resources that you can find in any language, both in English or in German or probably whatever else you might look it for. But back in 2020, the community was way smaller. And so it was hard for me to find something, and I found a single result. I found a World Jigsaw Puzzle Championship that had happened before. And was that in Belgium? Well, no. Was there ever a World Championship in Belgium? Also no, as far as I can tell. I have some suspicions now, and I will tell you later about what the Belgium reference might have come from, but I'm not certain that they are true. I have also found out in the meantime that the movie that I just spoiled for you, actually is a remake of an older movie that was done in Argentina, also called Puzzle, or Rompecabezas, which I might have butchered the pronunciation of. And I didn't manage to find from my quick search where they are going during the original movie. So maybe the original movie is actually more realistic about where competitions exist and what kind of competitions they do, but I didn't manage to find that out, and I haven't seen it. So if anybody of you has seen it, like, please come and tell me at the end. I would love to know. But back to my story. So I found out one World Jigsaw Puzzle Championship. And that one had happened in 2019, and it had been in Spain, in Valladolid, which is just north from Madrid. And so what I started thinking now is, well, maybe I want to go. There might be people like me who loves puzzles and are just weird and like just enjoys doing puzzles as their main hobby, even as adults. And so that was it. I started wondering, being a bit puzzled, am I fast? Can I go? How does it work? And so let's talk a little bit about what a competition is. A competition is usually like this. You take a lot of people, in this case around 100, you put them in one room all together, you give each of them a table, you give each of them a puzzle, they don't know what puzzle it's going to be, and they all try to do it at the same time, and whoever finishes the fastest is going to win. And that's the basics. Now, before going into more details about how the competition works, let me do a refresher about basics about puzzles. So the first thing about puzzle that you can think of is there are a few categories. The first category that you can think of is what material is the puzzle made of. And the first material that will come to mind, or at least the first that comes to mind to me if I think jigsaw puzzle, is cardboard. And cardboard is like the Ravensburger, the Schmidt puzzles, like what you probably find in your daily life or used to as a kid. And then there's also wooden puzzles. Wooden puzzles are also very enjoyable to do. They usually have fewer pieces. The pieces have weird shapes. So it's not exactly what I would try to speed run on, because the wood is thicker, so it takes a bit more time to click it together, and it's more about relaxing, smell the wood, and enjoy it, take your time and have a fun time. And then, just so you know, there's also more unconventional materials. There are some puzzles made out of plastic. There's puzzle made out of almost anything, including titanium. And in case you're wondering, those here are actually tweezers. So this puzzle is this big in total. And it was wonderful to do, but it's also really, really tiny. And it's a different kind of experience. And then the second kind of puzzle category that we could split them into is ribbon cat and random cat. Now, I grew up doing Ravensburger puzzles and Clementoni puzzles, and for me, ribbon cat is the only way that exists. And random cat is, again, harder to speed puzzle, and this puzzle here is not fully random cat, but what you can tell, and this is the main thing about the random cat, is that the pieces are not cut in a straight line. So there's not always 4 edges that meet at every corner. And so this is the second distinction, and now you will imagine we usually use ribbon cats for competitions. Why? Well, because it's easier to figure out what goes together. The first thing that you do when you're doing a puzzle, and trying to speedrun it, is obviously go by colors and try sorting out and doing sections together. But then once you're stuck, for example, you have 200 pieces of blue sky that all look exactly the same, what do? Well, you have to think about the shapes too. And the nice thing about the ribbon cat is that it only has these 6 shapes. And so if you get an edge like this, you know that in here, not everything can fit. Only 3 of the type of shapes can fit in here. And that reduces the options. And same if you want to go more complicated, if you only have 2 pieces like this, well, you do know that you have to draw a line up there, and the line can look like this or the opposite, but it still will tell you that there are 2 holes next to each other. So once again, in this situation, you would have to place in a piece that has 2 nibs next to each other. And so now that I've explained what ribbon cat is, let's go to brands. And so many of you, I imagine, have done Ravensburger puzzles. Ravensburger is one of the very common brands to find here in Germany. We are kind of lucky. It's 2 hours away. They are from Ravensburg, which is why the name is Ravensburger. And we are just used to seeing them in every Kaufhaus, in every toy shop, everywhere. What you probably do not know, and well, I also didn't when I started in this journey, is that Ravensburger is kind of considered the brand by everyone in the world because they're really, really good quality. The fit is very good, and they just mass produce a lot. People also love the thick cardboard. The blue cardboard from Ravensburger is iconic. And so Ravensburger has been the brand that has been used for all the World Jigsaw the World Jigsaw Puzzle Championship that has happened, and many of the other competitions that have spun up in the meantime. And I assume it might stay like that. And here we are lucky because we can just very easily find them and buy them, whether they are new or secondhand. So going back to Worlds, we were at the point where I had found out it existed. There had been one competition in 2019, and I was wondering, can I actually attend? And so what I did is I bought myself the puzzles that I had used at Worlds. And so let's start with individuals. Individuals is a competition in which you have a 500-piece puzzle, and, well, you're just trying to put it together as fast as possible. The maximum time limit is 90 minutes, and if you don't finish in time, then they count how many pieces you've put together that are in groups of at least 3. So you still get a ranking for the last positions. And in 2019, the winning time with this puzzle, the Family of Elephant, which is a medium-hard puzzle, was 46 and 33. So I bought this, I did this at home, and it took me 1 hour and 17. Now, 1 hour and 17 is 77 minutes. It's the same repeated numbers, so it sounds nice. And it would have placed me in 43rd place. So I was very, very happy with this result. At this time, my goal was not to go and try to win. I wanted to know if I want to go and meet people, make friends, and find a community. A placement like this is like in the middle range. I'm not going to win. I'm not going to be the last. Not going to embarrass myself. I probably can finish the puzzle in 90 minutes, no matter what puzzle it is. I'm going to go. And this was the first time ever that I timed myself doing a puzzle, by the way, because I didn't have any 500-piece puzzle at home. I only had like 1,500 and up, I think, at that point. And so what do? Like, I just brought the one from the competition to try timing myself for the first time. And then we did the same thing with pairs. So I begged my husband, that hadn't done a puzzle in over 20 years, probably, to do the pairs competition puzzle with me and potentially come to Spain with me. And so we did the same thing, and 34 minutes for the winning time. It took us 1 hour and 5. The placement was a bit lower, but that's expected. After all, like, he kind of hates doing puzzles. And but it was still decent. So I was happy, and so I decided to sign us up. And the rules for signing up is, back then, so we were waiting for the sign-ups to open for September of 2021. The 2020 edition had already been skipped because of the pandemic. And when the registrations opened, the only rule was you need to be 16, and there still needs to be an open spot. Nowadays, the rules are even more relaxed, so you just need to be 14 years old to sign up and participate. And if you're participating in pairs or in teams, you do not even need to be 14. You just need to have at least one adult in your group. And so I signed us up. We didn't manage to go in 2021 because they actually postponed it again because of the pandemic. So what happened is we get to 2022, and it is now June, and we go to Spain. So we go to Spain, and we took a little bit of time to do holidays. We had never been to Spain, so we took a week. We traveled around, and then we arrived in Valladolid. We arrived in Valladolid. It's very nice. We do a tour of the town. It was even organized by the championship organizers. And I started meeting people and making new friends, and then we get to the cupola. So this cupola here is the place where they are holding the World Championship, and it has been this location for the past 3 years, well, 3 editions, more than years, and it's still going to be this one this year in September. And this cupola is huge, and it's really, really great. I am not sure what they initially built it from. Something about the Millennium, I think, because it's called the Millennium Dome. But it is very ecological, and so it's built with all of these white materials so that lights come in very, very nicely, and it's very even across the whole cupola. And even in the evening when they turn on artificial light, it's still very evenly distributed across the whole room, which is what you want for a competition, because you want everyone, like, nobody to be disadvantaged because they have shade or like weird reflections on their table. And inside the cupola, it looks like this. This is a picture taken inside the cupola from a drone. And there's 100 and something tables in there. in rows, and they all look the same. They put these white plastic pieces on the table to help even more with making it glare-free and all even for all of the participants, and pieces also slide better than on the basic table. And so that was it. Day 2, we are back to my story. It's day 2, and the first competition happens. So by now, like, the championship had grown a little bit, so they added some qualification rounds. The qualification rounds are not before Worlds, still right now. Like, you do not need to go to a national competition to qualify to go to Worlds. There are national competitions as of today, but you still do not need to go. Like, you can go, you can be the national champion, but it's not mandatory to be allowed to go to Worlds. And so here we are. I do my first puzzle, my first ever competition, and it was a qualifying round divided in 2, and it took me 41 minutes, and I got second place. So first puzzle in Discovery, well, adrenaline does a lot. At home, I had never done a puzzle in less than an hour up to this point. And 41 minutes versus 1 hour, it's a huge difference. This is not even a super easy puzzle because there's a lot of the same dog around and all of that. So I found out, well, actually, I thought I was fast because I've done lots of puzzles in my life. Maybe I'm even faster than I thought I would be. And so this is the moment that I consider my actual start of my journey into speed puzzling. Because up to here, I was going to Valladolid just to find people and like make new friends. From here on, it was well, I still am not aiming to be the world champion, but I actually want to also decently compete. I'm having fun, and I'm actually good. And so we continued, and I did the finals. I placed 4th in the end, which was also a really good result, again in the 30 minutes. I wasn't even close to the world champion. Like, he was unbeatable. So he had like 9 minutes ahead of me. So that's, yes, 34 minutes for that puzzle with all of the houses only. Yeah, he's really, really fast. And we did pairs. We also placed well in pairs because 12 placed. Sure, it took us 21 minutes longer than the couple who won. But again, this is my husband. He came with me. He hates puzzling. He has done this 1 more year, and now he has quit. So, because I have too many friends. And also, sadly for him, between 2019 and 2022, they increased the puzzle pieces. So for pairs, this is the finals. And if you can look, like in the corner, it's a 1,000-piece puzzle. It wasn't a 500 anymore. So he had to puzzle double and train with me. And then we also did teams. And teams was our best ranking. So we paired up with a couple from Stuttgart. So we actually participated as Germany. You do sign up and choose your country to represent for all the competitions. And you are allowed to have pairs or teams of mixed nationalities. And so in this case, it was 2 of us Italians, 2 of them German. And since we are living in Germany, we thought, well, we will participate as German. It seems fair. And so our team, Techday, got 2nd place at Worlds. And for teams, you have to do more than 1 puzzle. In that case, it was 1,000 and a 1,500-piece puzzle. And as you can probably guess, this is how the 1,500-piece puzzle ended. So we still had all of this sky left to do, and still we got 2nd place. The first place team did manage to finish both puzzles, but they are the only one who did. So since then, they have changed the competition, and we are now doing 2 1,000-piece puzzles for teams in 3 hours. So they kept the 3 hours limit, but they lower the number of pieces. And I'm not certain, but I believe the reason might be because this was not fun. There were 80 people in the room, and well, it was fun, but it's also not very fun to have to count 300, I think, in our case pieces, and more than that for everybody else. And have 79 teams in a room with 80 that have not finished the puzzle. So no cheering from the sidelines because there are sidelines around, and everybody being sad on the, oh, we do not even know how we placed. We will find out in 2 hours after they actually upload all of the rankings. So that was it, my first experience at Worlds. And then if we continue, I've been to Worlds once more, and I am going to go to Worlds again. And Worlds has grown a lot. So I said at the beginning the community was growing. The community has grown for a lot of reasons, I believe. A bit of it is just word of mouth. Like people tell their friends that they've gone. People tell their friends that they found something, that this was cool, and more people get interested, and so on and so forth. And also, another thing that I think has helped a lot with this is Karen. So my friend Karen has a YouTube channel, Karen Puzzles, and a lot of people, like hundreds of thousands of people, have watched her videos about the World Championship. And they have found out that the World Championship, or even championship in general, exists from that. And like Dietmar here, who introduced me, is actually one of those people. So I actually have proof that this has happened. And so in 2019, when I wasn't there yet, they had a little less than 200 participants at Worlds. The first time I participated, we had 250 people. And I can also tell you that almost everybody that placed on the podium or close to it, including me, were all new participants that had never been to Worlds before. And in 2023, so last year, it was the same. We went from 250 people to 600 people. They did even 3 rounds of qualifications, well, 2 rounds of qualifications plus the finals for individuals because there were so many people. And 80% of people were new participants who had never been to Worlds before. So the rankings also have the same effect. Like the first 2 spots for individuals were the same last year, sorry. But the person who was 3rd placed 6th, and I who was 4th placed 8th. And that's totally normal. There's a lot of people that are actually fast that are finding out about this. It's a community that is growing. Kind of similar, it happened for me in the other competition. In pairs, my husband was along again, and instead of 12, we placed 17th. And in teams, we also had the same team, and we placed 4th instead of 2nd. So this is growing. Now, I don't know how it's going to go in September of this year, in a couple of months, but I can tell you that the number of registrations went from 600 to 1,000, 1,200. So a lot of people are going to be new and are going to be fast, and I believe that this is going to continue growing for a few more years yet, which is amazing because the people are really lovely. Like everybody, even the world champion who won, he was so happy in finding out that there were people that could like almost get to his time last year. And like this is the kind of community that the puzzle community is. We are happy about each other. We are happy about other people having beaten us. We are weird that way. Okay, so now, remember I talked about Belgium at the beginning, well, in the middle. So we mentioned Belgium when we were talking about the movie. In the movie, they were going to Belgium for the World Championship. Now, since then, I have found and met a few people from Belgium. In particular, I met a friend who lives in Brussels, and she's Italian, so I met her because we tried teaming up to do a team of Italians for Worlds. This was already meant to happen in 2022. We had 4 people, all living in different towns, but then, well, the other people had to cancel, and so that's how all of my reaching out to the people in Stuttgart started and like making the German team. But I still have met with this group of Italian in the meantime, and the lady living in Brussels, she actually knows about the competitions that go on in Belgium, because there are some, I found out now. Now, I hadn't found out about any of these because they are, well, first of all, they announce them only in French, and I do not speak French, so I didn't try to search for information in French. And second, they are almost word of mouth. Like some of them appear on Facebook, some of them maybe have a mention on a tiny note on a website, and some of them, they just send the email to the people that have participated in the years before, and you need to know from someone else who to contact to ask for the actual date. But now there are communities that are trying to keep a list so that people know that this exists. But the fact is that I did go to some competitions in Belgium in the meantime, and these are all teams competitions that work kind of differently from Worlds. These are very long competitions. It's like 8, 10, 12, 24 hours of straight puzzling. And you get these huge rooms, and there's these fences that separate the tables, and you always go with a team. And you can have as many people as you want in your team. The only rule is that only 4 people can sit at the table at the same time. And so you get the same puzzle at the beginning. Everybody has it there on the table. You start all together. You do your first puzzle. And after that, a judge comes, writes down your time, and signs it to check that someone has checked that you actually finished the puzzle. And then in some cases, they do bring you the next puzzle. But in most of them, you actually take your paper sheet. You run to the podium where you give them the paper sheet. They look at it. They check. And they give you the next puzzle and the paper sheet back. And then you run back to your table, and you can start the next puzzle. And so for these, I've done them with mostly this group of Italians that I'm finally going to do Worlds with this year. Fingers crossed that nothing happens again. And we used to usually have a 5th person that shows up for a couple of hours to allow us to have some bathroom breaks, because otherwise you still need to run out and go to the bathroom at some point during the competition, and you're losing precious time. And we've won a few of them. This is one that we won in our loan in March of this year, I believe. And you can see in 12 hours, you can do a lot of puzzles as a team. So these are the puzzles that we did as a team. So it's a big pile. One of them was unfinished because the last one, was still incomplete on the table, but all of the others are done. So there's a lot of them. Now, I don't know for sure if this is where the Belgium mention comes from, but the 24 hours in Belgium is actually famous, I found out. There are people all over the world traveling for that. I don't think it's what they were mentioning in the movie, because the movie was about pairs competition, and this is a 24 hours with a team. But maybe there's some relations there. I don't know. And so to finish, what am I still doing now? Well, nowadays, there's a lot of social media. So I watch YouTube sometimes. Other people watch YouTube more than I do. I still stuck to my TV series most of the time, but there's a lot of YouTube channels. I'm still going to Worlds. I hope to keep going. And there's also associations and competitions nationally. So Germany has founded its association in January of this year, and they're going to do their first competition in October. And there was another competition in the north of Bavaria in May. And then I'm trying to help organize the first Italian championship too. Not that we have a date yet, but we are getting there. And also online competitions have showed up. And they first appeared in the US, where they are doing them through Zoom. And now they appeared in Europe too. And we are doing them through Meet. So you get the puzzle, it's shrink wrapped, you open it all at the same time, and you have your camera on, and you type done in chat once you're done, and someone checks that you actually finished the puzzle. So there is still a lot. And so that was mostly it. This is the story of how I ended up being very, very puzzled, but not at all confused. And thank you all for listening to me.
Thank you very much for this very, very interesting talk. Even for me, I've talked to you a couple of times, but there were quite some. So I didn't know about the Belgium thing in the movie, so that was interesting. Maybe some of you have questions now.
Thank you very much for the very interesting and fun presentation. I'm interested in the training, because to me it sounded like you were, let's say, someone who runs marathon for fun and then started doing 100 meters, because you said the first time you did a 500 pieces jigsaw puzzle was basically for the first competition. So how did that work? Did you plan it? Was it more, you were going there for growing a network or something? So maybe you were more going with the flow, or did you, have a tight schedule or something?
I did try planning for it. So well, I had done 500-piece puzzles, but as a kid. And then as adult, yes, I had stopped. But yes, after I bought that one, like from then, since the competition, I did buy a lot of them and started like doing them more focused on the let me try doing it as a speed run. I don't think I improved a lot in those months, but I still did a lot of puzzles, which was good exercise. And it's also a little bit different. Like when you are doing the puzzle for speed, you do want to start by flipping all of the pieces up, for example. And sorting the edges is also something that I usually do. Not everybody does it, but like so trying to get a bit faster at that is something that you try to do. And also concentrating only on the puzzle. Like, as I said, I usually watch TV while I'm doing the puzzles, but then it's much more relaxing, and sometimes I stop, I watch the movie, because it's the point in which you don't just listen to it, but you want to watch the images, and it's like, who cares? While doing the competition one is, okay, I will sit here in quiet for 30 minutes, or, well, 1 hour back then, and like try to only do the puzzle and concentrate on it. So I did train, yes. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but.
Yes, thank you very much.
Where do you store all your puzzles?
My living room is overflowing with puzzles. So I have like a billy that is full of puzzles. I bought one more shelf that is full of puzzles. And the living room, like below the TV, there's like 500-piece puzzles only in like doubled rows of like 9 puzzle high, because there's like a gap between the shelves on top and like the shelves on the bottom. And like my goal is to continue keeping puzzles out of my closet in the bedroom, because at some point it was also full of puzzles. But yes, it's kind of hard, because Munich, well, rent is expensive, so my apartment is not that big. And there are people that have amazing puzzle rooms, and I see them online sometimes and I envy them, but I just have puzzles everywhere in the house.
So sort of considering that this is a tech IT conference, whatever, is there an algorithm or a strategy that I basically sort of can follow that is sort of guaranteed, I don't know, to work? Or like, because obviously I have not seen the puzzles before. So how do I approach it?
So, well, the first thing again is like flip all of the pieces. I sort the edge out while I do it. Don't always start with the edge. After that, I usually go by color section. So it's like keep glancing at the picture for a while until you vaguely have it in your hand, and go for whatever like you can recognize best at the beginning. And also not too huge sections, usually, because you don't want to go for a color that is all over the place. But I don't think there is a strategy for everybody. Like, I've seen people do a full sort at the beginning, like divide everything in piles and then work by that. That is not the way I'm fastest. Like, I have tried doing a comparison, doing the puzzle and picking out the pieces that I want to work on now versus like doing the full sort. And the full sort for me like turned out to be like more minutes. So I think it also depends on people. And some of it is actually training yourself, like training to use your left hand too. Like, I know that I'm still not as coordinated with my left hand as I wish to. If I try to put a piece in with my left hand and I don't look at it while I'm doing it, it doesn't go in. I mess it up, like slightly the orientation. While with my right hand, maybe because I always used to use my right hand most, I know where it goes. So there's tiny things like that.
So you talked about Ravensburger, but I'm wondering what is your actual favorite kind of puzzle, and why is it Clementoni?
I think it's still Ravensburger actually now. I wouldn't have been able to pick between Ravensburger and Clementoni if you had asked me a few years ago, because I think I had an equal amount of the two as a kid. And so I still think they are like very similar in quality, and I love them both. And yeah, I grew up in Südtirol more or less, so like we had both of them very easily available. Clementoni is an Italian brand, so I could say that I still love Clementoni on principle because it's a good Italian brand, so I have to, right?
Hi. Rookie puzzlers often tend to do the edges and corners first. Is that the thing pros do as well?
I would say not always, because there's often puzzles that where the edge is actually the hardest part to do, because it maybe looks all the same. And if you build it from inside out, you're going to be faster in putting the edge in, because you just connect it to pieces that are already there instead of building it from nothing. So I think it depends a bit. Sometimes, yes, the good strategy is like everything is a mess, and the edge will give you some orientation. Sometimes it's easier to start from something colorful and then build the edge as you go. Yeah, and also it's a bit about like space management too, I would say. Sometimes if you have too many pieces in the way, like you cannot really put the full edge together without like piling your pieces up, and that will hide them from you. So you also don't want that to happen.
Thanks for the interesting talk first. When you're puzzling in a team, what is your strategy? As a strategy, how you split the task upon each other?
Yeah, we do have a strategy. We do not have the perfect strategy yet, but for sure is like we try to divide the pieces at the beginning between each other so that everybody flips, and we try to do that all together and sort the edge out while we go. And in that case, actually, yes, one person from the team starts with the edge while the others finish flipping pieces and start sorting. And then we have usually like the person that we know is kind of the slowest, volunteers and like will do the sorting for everybody else, and like the others start puzzling. And so we are going to meet and train more like in August this year, and like we have a plan about like what we want to train and figure out, like which one of us is fastest at doing the sky versus the area that has a lot of things going on in there, and like so that we know how to plan better and strategize and be like as optimized as possible when we get to Valladolid.
Thanks for the talk. In a competition, do you have like, is there like one brand of puzzle that all of you solve? And could it happen that could it happen that you already, like if you train a lot, that you already get puzzles where you know, I've solved this one, so.
So this is a very, very good question, and I forgot to talk about that earlier. So yes, it is the same puzzle for everybody. You usually do know the brand that you're going to get, so it could happen. But for that, at Worlds, what they do is for the individual, like for the semifinals and the qualification rounds, it could happen. They use a puzzle that is kind of recent, so it has happened that people have done it before. But for finals, they are bringing in an unpublished puzzle that is going in the next year catalog, and that means that for certain, like nobody has seen the puzzle before, to make it fair.
And how big is the difference, whether you know the puzzle before?
It can be quite a few minutes, and it also depends when you've done it. I think like around 5 minutes shaved off, like as a default, just because you know the puzzle and you don't have to look at the image. If you've just done it, like if you do the same puzzle 3 times in a row, you can gain also 10 minutes or even more. Like you can tell the difference, and you can see that whether people know the puzzle or not. You also like you start remembering some of the pieces where they go, or you know better how to approach it. Because the first time you improvise, you look at the image and you're like, I think this is the area to start with. If you do it the second time, you know, actually, you know what, that was hard, and it would have been nicer to do the areas around it and then connect that in. But that you kind of learn it as you go, and so doing the puzzle a second time, you're going to be faster.
So you told us that you come from the big puzzles and the large amount of pieces. You do the speed puzzling. You also mentioned the 12 and 24 hours puzzling. Which type of puzzle do you prefer most at the moment? And are there different strategies to do speed puzzling compared to the long distance puzzling, I would call the 12 or 24 hours puzzling?
No, I think the strategies are the same. You just kind of repeat and repeat. For the long, like the marathon puzzles, like the 12-hour or so, you also need to keep being happy and enthusiastic about the puzzle, and so that's an extra struggle to have. For me, it's like you can let me puzzle for 12 hours. I love it. Like, I just need to have some bathroom breaks. But I have like other teammates that have needed to take like an hour break because it's like, I'm done. Like, I cannot do a puzzle anymore. Like, I kind of want to leave. So that's the only big difference, that like you will slow down a little bit along the competition. But all of the teams do.
So there's a question from the chat from Senya Piang. So your talk was very fun and engaging, and I was wondering what type of puzzles should a beginner start with to build their speed and accuracy?
So I would start from doing some easy puzzles. There are like the postcard puzzles, for example, from Ravensburger, which you might have seen if you look for the world puzzle from the past few years. And there's also a new one from this year. Like, that's a good example of a puzzle that it's easy. I think they are the fastest puzzle that you can find around. And you can start from those and like start doing some pattern recognition and like see just how to approach a puzzle that you know it's not going to take you forever. And then I would suggest just doing a mix of puzzles. Like, do not stick to a single type of puzzles, because doing a photograph is different from doing a landscape, and it's different from doing a Mickey Mouse cartoon puzzle that is all white and like exactly perfectly white because it's a drawing, and so on and so forth. So try doing a mix, I'd say.
Hi, you talked about the 6 pieces that are also still there, and how you can find some patterns, kind of, I guess, instinctively now. Are there more patterns than the one you mentioned about 2 pieces together, like when there are more pieces, for example?
These are mostly the patterns. Like, you can see like what I was showing earlier, the pieces, how they fit next to each other. And the only other pattern that I didn't show, like, this is the complicated one, and you can do the same with the opposite shape, obviously, like if you have like the 2 nibs that come out. The other thing that you can do is, if you had a row of pieces here, you can see what all is here and what is here and like match these 2 together. That is another thing that you do. But I think these are all of the patterns that you get. And personally, I do go for all the weird pieces first, because I find it easier to notice where there is going to be a weird piece. And then usually, at least in Ravensburger, I believe that there's less weird pieces than the standard piece. And I'm calling the standard piece the one that like is symmetric. Well, there's more than one that is symmetric. The middle one on top.
Okay, maybe a final question from me. When was the last time that you did a puzzle and did not have a timer running next to it?
Oh. I'm not sure, because I actually started timing myself all of the time just because why not? Like, even when I do the giant puzzles, now I have the timer on. Even if I know that I'm not going to care and I'm going to relax and stop and like maybe miss stopping the timer because I look at the TV and whatever, I still have it there for curiosity. Not true, I know. So a few weeks ago, when like the second part of the Bridgerton TV series came out, so Ravensburger published 2 puzzles with the Bridgerton. There's a 300 pieces and a 500 pieces. I bought them on the day they came out, which is the day when the first half of the Bridgerton series released. They arrived the day after, but I had already watched Bridgerton, so I waited for part 2, and I did those 2 puzzles while watching part 2 of Bridgerton, and I did that without a timer at all. So that's when it happened.
All right, then, thanks again.